The Federal and Thomas Hospital Puliangudi jointly present the Tenkasi Marathon 2025. This event is co-presented by Selvarani Readymades and powered by Repco Home Finance and Sriram Nalamani Yadava Educational Institutions. Run for Health on Sunday, June 29.
Hello and a warm welcome to Federal special program Capital Beat. Tension continues to brew between Israel and Iran. On the ground, Iran and Israel have traded strikes overnight with no signs of de-escalation in their week-long conflict. Today is the 8th day. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said his military's objective was to strike all of Iran's nuclear facilities. Iran, meanwhile, plans to attack the offices of Channel 14 news station, which it accuses of being Netanyahu's propaganda channel. And this is what I'm reading out from CNN, what CNN has quoted. But in the meantime, if you talk about the diplomacy window, President Donald Trump said that he will allow 2 weeks for diplomacy before deciding whether to launch a strike in Iran. And a powerful Iran-backed militia in Iraq has vowed to attack US military bases in the region if Trump decides to enter the conflict. So it's a tough situation, what we are seeing in the Middle East, especially what's happening between Iran and Israel. And we must not forget, in the middle of all this, we've also had a meeting of Donald Trump with Pakistan Army Chief Asim Munir, and a lot has happened over that meeting as well. So we'll try and discuss all of this. Joining me is former Ambassador Vivek Katju. So thank you so much for joining. And my first question to you, sir, is that do you see any signs of de-escalation as of now? Or we still continue to say that the things are in a flux and we do not know which way the things will turn?
Look, I think Netanyahu has gone too far to de-escalate at this stage. His objective is, as he has announced, to neutralize Iran's nuclear bomb-making capabilities. At the same time, the US president has clearly indicated that he will not only not allow Iran to have a nuclear bomb, but that he will also not allow Iran to enrich any uranium. If you recollect, the Obama Iran deal had this provision that Iran will be allowed to enrich uranium under monitoring up to about 3.25 or 3.75%, which is far away from weapons grade refinement. Now, Iran till now has not agreed to these terms. And it had seemed by Trump's departure a day prior to the conclusion of the G7 summit in Canada that he was getting prepared to strike Iran, even though there were divisions between his own coalition and his own supporters. Because, as you know, some of his main supporters are split on this question of whether there should be an entanglement with Iran. The latest news is that he is given a window of 14 days for diplomacy to work.
Yes.
And there is no doubt that during this period, the Iranians will be meeting with the Americans to try to work out a deal. I don't see how the Iranians can agree to not not be in a position to enrich any uranium. I think they'll strive their utmost to be in a position to, like in the Obama deal, to enrich up to 3.25%. The problem is that we really don't know as of now the kind of impact that the Israeli attack has actually made on Iran. We know that the leaders of both the formal military and the Pastaran had been eliminated. We know that Israel has struck at other facilities, including uh, economic facilities, apart from nuclear facilities, and in turn, Iran has shown us a great deal of defiance because it has continued to attack Israel with ballistic missiles and causing some damage, but certainly the damage caused by the Israelis is far more. So, uh, to with this long preface, let me answer your question in one sentence. As of now, I don't see uh, a de-escalation. On the other hand, I see that Netanyahu will try his best to draw the Americans into uh, this armed conflict or war.
But this is really concerning, sir. If you are saying that there are no signs of de escalation and Netanyahu, in all likelihood, will draw Americans into this battle, then what happens? And as I pointed out, and you also said that Donald Trump has given himself a window of 14 days. Now, in those 14 days, we do not know what's going to unfold, but will it not be a very tough situation if Donald Trump is pushed to join this war?
Um, it will be a very difficult situation because, as of now, if you've seen over the last week, it's been only between Iran and Israel. No other power has come. Uh, yes, I think the Arab states have been compelled to allow Israeli aircraft to go, Israeli missiles to go and strike Iran, and on the other hand, they've also allowed the airspace to be used by Iranian missiles. But apart from that, the oil production goes on. The life, I'm sure, is tense in the Arab Peninsula states, the Gulf states, uh, and shipping is there. Insurance premium would have gone up sky high at the moment, but it hasn't made the kind of impact that it can or it could have. Now, if the Americans come in, then of course the circle would widen, and then a number of imponderables will come into play. Uh, I doubt whether, for all their tall talk, the Iranian militias will be able to inflict any major damage on American interests.
But Ambassador Katju, when you say that if America joins and the circle might widen, now what does that mean really? That are other nations going to be sucked in? The entire Middle East possibly could be in turmoil, where other nations also will be forced to take a stand. What does that mean when you say that if America joins and the circle might widen?
Well, if America joins, then we don't know how the Arab street will behave, for instance. There may be demonstrations in Arab countries which haven't taken place till now. Uh, Iran, there has been a great deal of solidarity expressed by the Arab countries and the other Islamic states for Iran, but we've not seen any concrete action. Uh, if America joins and if Iran tries to then widen the circle, it's not as if other countries would seek to widen the circle. The Iranians may try to do it. They have short range, they have intermediate range ballistic missiles. And if they try to widen the circle by striking at American bases, at American targets, at American shipping, they try to stop or impede the movement of ships along the Straits of Hormuz or across the Straits of Hormuz, then we are in a different situation. So that is why I say the circle may widen and they will be important.
Right. But so how much of significance would you really attach to this meeting which happened between Donald Trump and Pakistani Army Chief Asim Munir in context with Israel and Iran war? I'll come to India later, but many people are saying, and there is a discussion on the social media that Trump will now use Pakistan for tightening the leash on Iran. How do you see the things unfolding in on this particular front?
I think you've asked a question to which there are no definite answers. Uh, there can be informed speculation, but as of now, nothing beyond that. And what are the elements of that speculation? One, I don't see the Americans needing Pakistani help or assistance on the waters. The American naval capacities are fairly formidable and they are being augmented by the movement of at least one carrier group, what one reads in the papers, to augment the present naval assets that they have in the region. Second, uh, I am not sure if Americans would really need to use Pakistani airspace. I think if they do decide to use their bombers, the B-52s, etc., they will find ways and means of entering Iranian airspace without having a need for Pakistani airspace. Similarly, unlike the Afghan situation, where they got uh, air bases, the Shamsi Air Base in northwest Pakistan, I don't think they'll need an air base of that kind in Pakistan for the Iranian operation. Again, Iran, unlike Afghanistan, is not landlocked. So, in the case of Afghanistan, Pakistan was a vital supply route uh, for American forces in Afghanistan. That will not apply here. So, where will the Americans need Pakistan? One can do some wild speculation, and I'm again underlining wild speculation. And one can be that if a situation arises where uh, there is chaos and there needs to be peace, uh, you know, peace keeping forces in Iran, then there'll have to be a need for boots on the ground. Now, I doubt whether Trump would be really interested in sending a large number of American soldiers into Iran. I
Yes.
doubt whether Europe will send some. So, where will these peacekeeping boys come from? I think it's here that the Pakistanis can play a role, even though might be very reluctant. But if there is complete chaos in Iran, then there can be a situation where you need forces to keep the peace and or to maintain some order, and that is where Asim Munir can be helpful. Otherwise, I think Trump would like Pakistan being a major Islamic state with it has a population of 240 million people. It has nuclear weapons. Its economy is, of course, in a shambles, but uh, it is a major Islamic state, nevertheless, even if it's in deep distress and trouble. Trump would like that it should, if it at all it is critical of the American action, it is very muted in its criticism.
So, from
It
what
would,
you're saying, sir, from what you've just explained, and you've explained that very well, that Pakistan's role probably could be very limited, and compulsively America would not need Pakistan to that level. And maybe if the chaos, I mean, if the chaos heightens, and maybe for the peacekeeping forces, but even then, there's not an element of surety there. So, how much of significance do we really accord to this meeting between Asim Munir and Donald Trump? What kind of diplomatic posturing was it when Donald Trump says, and also in the Indian context now, I would like to ask, when he says that I love Pakistan, he spoke also in context with Operation Sindoor and the ceasefire, for which Donald Trump has been taking credit. So I want to just understand this diplomatic posturing which Donald Trump is taking for India, for Pakistan. There are several reasons being attributed that he wants a Nobel Peace Prize and this, that. I won't go into that because that's again very speculative. But I want to understand from you the diplomatic posturing by Donald Trump.
Look, first of all, the luncheon meeting was itself extraordinary. I've
Okay.
used that word on other TV programs, but I think that
Yes.
word suits it perfectly because it's a very, very rare occurrence, if at all, for the President of the United States, the holder of the world's most powerful political office, to host an army chief, even if he holds the rank of field marshal, uh, in the White House. Uh, if at all such a meal was to be given, it normally protocol-wise would be by the Chairman Joint Chiefs or at most by the Defense Secretary. But for the President to do so is a significant gesture to Pakistan. Question is, why have they made this gesture? I think a few reasons strike one straight away. First, uh, they want to ensure that Pakistan, where the diplomacy has been somewhat inactive, that the Americans pushed their diplomatic efforts in Pakistan into more active gear. That is point one. Point two, I think they are conscious that Pakistan's proximity to China, which has always been enormous, is growing. Its reliance on China for all kinds of needs, including defense and security, is enhancing. And I think the Americans would like to keep an eye on this, and if possible, find a niche uh, in this area too. Uh, Third, uh, in the past, the Americans have always wanted to have a balanced relationship in South Asia. That doesn't mean that they are not conscious of the great difference between India and Pakistan. That's also not. That doesn't mean that Donald Trump doesn't realize that India is needed, and there is bipartisan support for India in America in the Chinese context. And India has a role to play in the Quad. So India is part of the USS, the United States Indo-Pacific postures and policies. Uh, but when it comes to the Western neighborhood, I believe that the past few years, especially after the US withdrew forces from Afghanistan, the Americans have been a little quiet, and Pakistan was itself undergoing a great deal of turmoil, political turmoil, the struggle between Imran Khan and the other political parties and Asim Munir. So now they seem to be clearly indicating that they're back. And within the Pakistani context, I'm sure if anyone has been terribly upset at this lunch, it would be Imran Khan who sits in a jail. You recollect, there was a lot of talk at one stage that Trump would pressure the Pakistanis to have Imran Khan released. I think that nothing of the kind. This signal was a clear signal of where Trump is going. The last point is Asim Munir and the Pakistanis are very good at playing to the ego of American leaders. And Donald Trump's ego is huge. And Asim Munir has lauded his attempts at mediation, etc. Whereas we have set the record straight, and we've said we were in conversation with the Americans, but that we made our decisions ourselves. And I think after the 35-minute conversation between Prime Minister Modi and Trump, we clarified our position straight away. So I think these are the elements that are in play at the moment. Pakistan is needed by the Americans for certain purposes, and Donald Trump will do so. There are also aspects of Donald Trump's own business interests, but I'm not going to that.
But Ambassador Katju, the kind of plain talking which happened in that 35 minutes conversation, as was made out to be between Donald Trump and Prime Minister Modi, did we say things enough to send out a message very clearly? Because back home, when you look at the domestic politics and the way the tweets have been coming from the opposition parties saying that, look, he's not, Prime Minister Modi is not saying things directly to Donald Trump. That kind of opposition has been coming. So my point is that have we been able to handle Donald Trump meticulously and carefully also the way we should have? Or you feel
I
that
think,
there could have been a more direct talking with Donald Trump? Was there a
I
possibility of
think,
doing that?
I think what Vikram Misri, the Foreign Secretary, said after the conversation between between Prime Minister and Donald Trump was as direct and as categorical as it could be. What more was required to be said? The Prime Minister said plainly that India doesn't accept mediation in India-Pakistan affairs or any bilateral relationship. That he laid out that when Vance spoke to him, he told Vance that if Pakistan hits, we hit them harder. And he said quite plainly that the Pakistanis approached us, and since our purpose was to attack terrorist targets and not the Pakistan people or the Pakistan state, we agreed to a ceasefire. I'm not going to enter into domestic politics. That's not been my area. But diplomatically, I think we made our points quite clearly. We made them in the past. The Prime Minister made them now. Now, Trump, despite all this, keeps on harping at the fact, at his belief that he mediated and prevented a nuclear war, and that Asim Munir and Modi are very smart people, etc. Trump has a certain style of speaking. He has apparently repeated this 15 or 16 times. And I, for one, believe that diplomacy requires that we set the record straight that we have done. And then we don't sweat about it. I mean, he is the American president. He has a style of speaking. He's not precise. He's loose in his formulations. He changes all the time. He somersaults. He has no inhibitions in somersaulting, and he says something, does something else. Now, one can argue that this is part of his style, part of his strategy. Certainly, what one expects in the world's foremost political leader is an element of predictability, because the world relies on the predictability and in terms of policies, approaches, positions of the major powers.
Right.
Otherwise, it becomes very difficult to manage diplomatically.
Absolutely.
But with
Absolutely.
Trump, the world has to live with him for 3.5 years. I think there's no point getting hot under the collar. You have to live with this man. He's there for the next 3.5 years. What do you do? He's not Biden. He's not Obama. He's not in the classic mode of American, politicians or major politicians anywhere in the world who choose their words carefully, who take positions after deep thought, after a whole process which is undergone. He comes, he says he's asked a question that his director of national intelligence has made one determination and told the Congress that, and he says, I don't care about what she says. Now, can you imagine such a thing anywhere else in the world or in America with any other president? But here's a guy you've got to deal with. Some say he's delusional. Well, if he is delusional, you've got to deal with his delusions for the next 3.5 years. And I think it's best, to me, it is best that we don't make it a controversy within India. What purpose will it serve?
Right.
Quite truly, I'm not taking political sides here. I'm really looking at it as a former diplomat that you've got to deal with this guy. And anyone in power in India would have had to deal with this mercurial guy. And what do? It's best to. That's why I said it's best to state your position, clarify it once, if necessary, twice, and then let him say things as much as he wants and just ignore it.
Right.
That's the best way of dealing with him.
Right. Absolutely. But one last bit before we wind up the interview, coming back to the Iran and Israel war, Netanyahu, in an interview with Fox News, had spoken about the political assassination of Ayatollah Khamenei. Now, that is also something which is quite discussed on the social media. In fact, today there are unconfirmed reports that there's an area in the neighborhood of Iran called Levizon where apparently the bunker of Ayatollah Khomeini has been attacked and targeted. Now, again, that's unconfirmed, so I'm not going to verify that, but there is a talk on the social media on this. Would you really see the possibility of Netanyahu going to that extent?
Well, he has attacked and successfully with assets within Iran and assets outside military leaders. Attacking the supreme leader, will be a move which will naturally inflame passions not only within Iran but the wider Shia world, and I dare say the Sunni leadership, Sunni countries, which may not be in full sympathy with Iran, would be hard put not to express their anger in the strongest terms. Uh, Finally, what purpose will it serve? If Khamenei has been the supreme leader after Khomeini, right? But there's all this talk of regime change. I don't see a possibility of regime change. I can see a possibility of chaos, but I don't see a possibility of regime change for the simple reason that where are the political parties or political forces or political actors of a different ideology who can step in and take control over the apparatus of the Iranian state, which is all since 1979 and 1980. That means over a period of 44 years, being created to sustain the present system, which is, I think in Farsi, is called the Vilayat-e-Faqih, or the rule of the jurisprudent, the present clerical system. So, will the elimination of the supreme leader, if that is something that they decide on, change the regime, or will his position be filled very quickly by the guardians? I think there's the committee of the guardians which finally decide who will be the supreme leader. Because there is an element of Iranian nationalism. They will come. There are sections within Iran which are not happy with the way the clerical order has ruled Iran over the last 4 decades and more. There's always been tension within Iran between what I call the innate Persianness of their culture, of their outlook to life, uh, and of the austere system which has been imposed on them. There has been someone as the greatest Indian scholar of Iran told me, there's been this that that Iranian culture is, to use a Hindi word, rasik, and on that has been imposed this very austere clerical order, and therefore there has been this tension.
Right.
Now, uh, second point: has Iran ever been used to a democratic order? No. There was the monarchical system which was replaced by the Vilayat-e-Faqih with Khomeini and then Khamenei. There's never been a democratic system in Afghanistan. So, sorry, in Iran. So, when all this is talked about, regime change and such things, I ask myself what will be its ingredients, and no one seems to be able to give an answer.
Right.
So, I think we shouldn't bandy these terms the way they are bandied around. And certainly, the targeting of the supreme leader would be an excess, would be a venture fraught with great imponderables. The only certainty is that it will evoke enormous anger in not only the Shia but the Islamic world.
So quite perplexing developments in Iran and Israel. But thank you, sir, so much for joining on the Federal. Thank you.
The Federal and Thomas Hospital jointly present the Tenkasi Marathon 2025. This event is co-presented by Selvarani Readymates, powered by Repco Home Finance and Sriram Nallamani Yadava Educational Institutions, along with associate sponsors Treasure Island International School, Homeway Properties, PPR Power Tech, and Premium Samsung Cafe. Run for Health on Sunday, June 29. Entry is free. All are welcome.